One thing that keeps coming up is like, what's the big deal with behavioral economics? I want to spend a little bit, just a couple of minutes on that. This is really a whole course in microeconomics, and I'm going to do in about 2 minutes. So bear with me. Sort of the centerpiece of standard economics is something called the rational actor model, or economic man. It's a kind of a sexist term, but this creature is sort of selfish, self-regarding, doesn't think about anybody else. So most women don't mind it being male. But that's really the starting point for this. And there are really 3 pieces to economic theory. There's a theory of the consumer, how consumers optimally allocate goods and services, how firms optimally allocate productive inputs, land, labor, of capital, and how both of these things come together in what's called general equilibrium. Okay, this is a utility function. People get well-being from consuming these 2 goods, our old friends X and Y. This is a production function. Firms produce some quantity using capital and labor. And as someone mentioned yesterday, you can do all kinds of, you can modify this thing quite a bit by itself. You can bring in self-regarding preferences, loss aversion, and so on. But you can't do that and move on to the next step, actually the final step, which is to prove that competitive markets are efficient. Technically, you need something like this. The rate at which consumers are willing to trade one good for another is the same as the rate that firms can stop producing one good and start producing another. So the marginal rates of substitution have to be the same. You can't do that if preferences are other regarding. So you have to have this sort of self-contained, self-referential person. And this is, I think, a key, because this is really the ideological reason for this model, to prove that free markets are efficient. That's called the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics. And if you lose that, you really lose sort of the rationale, the intellectual, theoretical rationale that free market economies are best. It doesn't mean that they're not, but you have to actually prove it using real data. And economists don't want to do that. Okay, so anyway, this is critical. So it's called a general equilibrium model. I think the central idea in neoclassical welfare economics is that a market economy will optimally allocate resources. You can't prove that mathematically without this economic man model. Okay. So you end up with something like this, sort of identical producers selling identical things to identical consumers. This is kind of the Walrasian system. I'll skip this one. Okay, so the first sort of important thing is you need this to prove that free markets are efficient, which you can't do. The second thing is this model is really used in economic models of sustainability. And what you want to do is sustain economic output and the output of goods and services. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. To do this, you need to sustain the capital stock necessary to produce this stuff. Okay, and we talk about natural capital, the services of the environment, manufactured capital, like the machines that produce things, and then human capital, and education, technological knowledge, and so on. Okay, sorry about this. Okay, this is kind of the standard climate model based on that. Again, the point of society, you increase society's well-being by producing more goods and services. You do that by maintaining the capital stock. It's really a financial model. If you have $1 million in the bank and you're living off the interest, you want to maintain that $1 million, or you're not getting as much interest. You want to live off the interest, not the principal, in other words. So in these climate models, any diversion of this capital stock, the output of that to mitigate climate change means a net loss of economic output. And so the only reason you would pay for climate change policies if climate change is doing more damage than what it's costing you to mitigate it. We're going really fast here. Anybody?
Good job.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going. Okay, yeah, there's all kinds of things built in here. One thing is there's no economic output. It's like, measured in dollars. $1 is as good as any other. So it doesn't matter if the economy is producing, pet rocks or, light rail transit or whatever. It's all the same. And so this is a real quote by William Nordhaus. I think, still the most prominent climate change economist. Agriculture is the only part of the economy that's sensitive to climate change. It's just 3% of national output, so you can do away with it. We still have 90%, 97%. Wow. And Thomas Schelling has said the same thing, a Nobel Prize winner in economics. So it's just total blindness to reality. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how are people going to produce things if they starve to death? Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to skip this much too. All right, I want to say something about climate change. No matter what I'm talking about, I always throw this slide in because it's absolutely astounding. This goes back 400,000 years. As George mentioned, there's an article in Nature that pushed this back to 800,000 years. Okay, the blue is temperature, the green is CO2. You see the tight correlation between CO2 and temperatures. But the amazing thing is if you look at the variation here, this is carbon dioxide in parts per million. A variation of 40 parts per million from the mean here, 240, gets you into really hot periods like these four and where we are now, and ice ages, these four ice ages. It's amazing. And it probably goes back 3 million years, this kind of stability. And what we've done here is push this up to 390 parts per million. And the amazing thing, this has really happened most of it since 1950. The carbon dioxide in 1950 was something like 300 parts per million, I think. So within my lifetime, we've done this. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. And probably most of this has been in the last 25 years or so within the lives of my students. I mean, it's this incredible time to be alive, even you forget it. The kind of the morality and ethics and all the stuff we've been talking about. I mean, this is amazing, amazing. Can't get over this slide. One other thing, if you notice this part up here, the climate's been extremely unusually stable the last 10,000 years, and this is what we're screwing around with. So. And we're probably headed for 650 parts per million. God knows what's going to happen. And, I just had to throw this in. I've been doing some work in developing countries. This is a picture I took in December in Pakistan, a fishing village at the mouth of the Indus River. And these are the people that are really going to be hit hard first. They're already being hit hard by climate change. There's probably hundreds of millions of people across South Asia, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, the coast of Africa that are already being hammered by this. And so they're going to be on the front lines. And we should really think about these people. People live in fishing villages. They're already suffering.